Welcome to This Week in Christian History, a podcast from the Center for Christian History at Mississippi College. The Center for Christian History is dedicated to expanding knowledge and understanding of Christian history. Our mission is to provide a scholarly, unbiased look at the events, figures, and movements that have shaped Christianity over the centuries. You can visit centerforchristianhistory.com for daily historical highlights. And each week on this podcast, we'll do a deep dive into key moments with Christian history's leading authorities. Our first historical highlight for the week is evangelist Bob Jones Sr., who was born on October 30th, 1883. Jones felt that too many students lost their understanding of Christian values while in college, so he founded Bob Jones University in 1927. The university started in Bay County, Florida, before finding its permanent home in Greenville, South Carolina. Our next historical highlight for the week and the subject of our deep dive is Martin Luther and his 95 Theses. Luther wrote the document and nailed it to the door of the Castle Church in Wittenberg, Germany on October 31st, 1517. Our final historical highlight for the week is Michelangelo's painting on the Sistine Chapel ceiling, which was unveiled to the public on November 1st, 1512. The Sistine Chapel, known as the Pope's private chapel, was named for Pope Sixtus IV and is the site of the gathering of the College of Cardinals when a new pope is elected. Today in our deep dive, Nick Walters, director of the Center for Christian History, talks with Alec Ryrie of Durham University about Martin Luther and his 95 Theses.
Hello and welcome again to another episode of This Week in Christian History. And this week of our episode here at the end of October is one of those big days in Christian history that are pretty big tipping points. And it's all about Martin Luther nailing the 95 Theses on the castle door in Wittenberg. We have to say Wittenberg, right? Not Wittenberg for all of our German friends, right? We have to say it in the right way. Professor Alec Ryrie is with me here. He is a professor of Christian history at Durham University over in the UK. And thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure.
Yeah. So on a scale of 1 to 10, right? 10, but not a golf score, although I know you're close to Scotland, so maybe we ought to talk golf, right? But a non-golf score, 10 being the highest. The event that we're talking about today is got to be at least getting a 9.5, if not a full 10, right? As it relates to Christian history.
Sure. I mean, I guess I'm going to go for the 9.5 rather than full 10
Okay.
because there's a bit of legend around this, and the kind of, the guy marching up to the door with the hammer on the 31st of October, it probably didn't happen quite like that.
Right.
This is what historians always do. We're going along saying, no, let's go to your myths. But I mean, what that represents, this moment, what is kick-started by what at the time seemed just like a kind of pretty ordinary thing for a guy in Martin Luther's position to do. It sets in motion something pretty big, which, is still unfolding around the world today.
That's a great point. Well, give us some background on kind of what was going on. I know a lot was going on, that was going on not only with Luther personally, but also in and around what was going on in that particular area of the Holy Roman Empire at that time, and what was going on in Germany, as we would call it, Germany.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, that's a big question, and the problem is going to be how far you back up. So
okay.
So we are at the end of what we now call the Middle Ages. They didn't know it was the Middle Ages, where you've got a Europe, Western Europe is pretty much united in its allegiance to the Catholic faith, the universal faith, as they call it, which is presided over by the papacy. Institutionally, the Catholic Church is in a bit of a mess. The papacy's had a pretty bad 150 years for various reasons, and the men in charge of it in Rome in that generation are not particularly impressive guys.
Sure.
And so there's a real reputation for corruption around it. But there's a lot of energy for reform and renewal as well. Masses of these kinds of movements that are springing up. And the smart money is that there will be a wave of internal renewal and reform, because this is what has happened so often before. You know, for 1,000 years, the church in Western Europe has gone through these kinds of cycles. One of the things that makes it different is that the world is much more open than it's ever been before. It used to be that when there was a debate in the church, it happened amongst a few people, most of them monks or, you know, within universities. Now the doors have been flung open a lot wider. More people are literate than ever before. You've got a lot of religious movements which are trying to include ordinary lay people. And I mean, crucially, 70 years before this, you've had the invention of the printing press.
Sure.
And so you've got, that's one of the things that's driving this rise in literacy, that you've got masses of more people who've got the access to reading and writing than before. So these debates that might once have been dealt with kind of privately in Latin between scholars, it's now taking place in public. And in the middle of all this, Martin Luther, who is a professor of biblical theology at a pretty obscure university, newly founded university in Eastern Germany, what we now call Eastern Germany. It's then in the electorate of Saxony.
Right.
And he's also a member of a kind of reforming religious order, the Augustinian Friars, who are, you know, one of the more energetic of the religious orders of the time. And he starts formulating a pretty radical new understanding of God's grace. I mean, of course, he doesn't think it's a new understanding. He believes that he has rediscovered the original, the authentic meaning, especially of Paul. You know, he has immersed himself in the letter to the Romans and the letter to the Galatians, and you know, those two above all, but you know, a series of other New Testament texts, and has had this kind of profound, shattering experience of God's grace, of mercy, undeserved, unearned, and this
Sure.
sense that we're saved. The idea that we're saved by God's grace, that's uncontroversial. Pretty much everybody believes that. For Luther, what really turns his life upside down is his discovery, and it's something he discovers in his own life, that he is saved exclusively and entirely by God's grace, that there's nothing that he can do or needs to do that can in any way contribute to this. It's an experience of utter dependence, throwing himself onto God's mercy and knowing that his salvation is totally out of his own hands, and the sense of liberation that comes from that for him just seems to turn everything upside down. And so, I mean, this is a professor who has a religious breakthrough and a remarkable spiritual experience. Now, I mean, this kind of thing happens all the time. And it doesn't usually start a revolution and set the
Well,
world.
but he's in a setting, though, right? I mean, where he's able to have people like Melanchthon and others, people that he can bounce these things off of, that are peers, that can have this dialogue. So he's not like just some guy out there herding sheep in the greater Black Forest somewhere that went, oh, my heavens, I just started to read this stuff. This is fantastic. While that certainly may have happened in plenty of places that we may or may not know about, he was in a setting, though, where that could grow to doing something more than just having your own revelation. Is that a fair way of saying it?
That's completely right. So he's in a position to talk about this stuff, and because he's not just your shepherd in the Black Forest, but he is a professor. You know, he's a doctor of theology, which was quite a rare distinction in those days. I mean, he's already been recognized by the church, by the university, as a serious scholar, and so he is starting to explore this stuff with his friends, with his colleagues at the university. Luther is often gets seen as this kind of standalone hero. He's very much a man with a group of friends and colleagues around him. But even then, this kind of thing would normally stay within the walls of the university. And what kicks it off is a fundraising drive being pushed by his local archbishop, who is a singularly corrupt guy. Luther doesn't even know at the time that the reason for, he thinks that this is about raising funds to rebuild St. Peter's in Rome, which is what they say it is. Luther doesn't know that all this is about the archbishop trying to pay off the debts that he has from the illegal bribes that he paid in order to get made archbishop.
Right. Which also he was an elector as well, right? I mean,
that's a different guy.
Different guy. Okay.
Yeah. So there's the archbishop is the real problem. The elector is the prince. Frederick, the Elector of Saxony. I mean, elector is a kind of weird title. Basically, right. It means the local ruler, and he's a friend of Luther's. I don't think Elector Frederick ever really understood what Luther was on about, or was that interested in it. But Elector Frederick is the guy who founds Wittenberg University, and he's got a celebrity professor on his staff, and he likes it. So he just likes the way that this is drawing attention to his new place, which is fair. But so you've got this fundraising drive going on, and it is the principles of this are just so against what Luther has worked out in terms of his theology and ideas that he just I can't let this go. And so he produces this a public condemnation of it, and he does it in a really professory way. He produces this document which we call the 95 Theses. A thesis for us sounds like a book, but these theses are like bullet points. They're just kind of 1 or 2 line statements, and it's basically kind of laying down, these are the core ideas that I've got on this subject. I'm developing some kind of points for discussion, and it's a challenge. It's an invitation to take part in an academic argument. And it's written in Latin, very much the way that you would do this kind of thing. And it's possible that he posted them on the church door of the castle church in Wittenberg. The report we have of that he did that is like 20 years later.
But hadn't he done that type of thing before, though, right? I mean, that was not that unusual to say, hey, we're thinking about these things, using our modern maybe way of saying, hey, we're thinking about doing some of these things and kicking this stuff around. Here's something for folks if you want to learn about or know about. Come on down and come to the church, and we'll kick these ideas. Or I'm being probably a little,
No, I mean, I think that's exactly right.
But it's not that unusual of a thing, right?
No, it would be like, writing a Substack or something. It's just a completely normal way of saying, okay, I want to have an argument about this.
Right.
Someone come and have a fight with me about it. Which is why it's in Latin. It's he's wanting to do it in the normal academic way by the rules. I mean, what he says is a bit inflammatory. When you read these things, you think, hang on a second, this is going beyond sort of normal academic disputation. He's saying you're trying to build this church out of the blood and bones of Christ's sheep, and you think, whoa, okay, that's quite strong. But hey, they like to robust debate in those days. And so maybe he posted it on the castle door, but he did 2 much more important things with it. One of them is he sent a copy to the archbishop, which was, that's provocative. But the other one is he sends a copy to the printer. He gets this thing printed up and circulated. And the printer, when it lands on his desk, he thinks this is pretty good copy. And it looks as if it's on the printer's own initiative. It's not Luther's idea, that the printer decides to produce a German translation of it alongside. And so now suddenly it's out there in the open and people are picking this up. And, well, it all just rolls from there. What starts out as what should have been this invitation to a nice, civilized academic argument, pretty soon things have got way out of hand.
You can watch the rest of Nick's interview with Alec Ryrie on the Center for Christian History website at centerforchristianhistory.com. This Week in Christian History is produced for the Center for Christian History by Blue and Gold Media at Mississippi College, in cooperation with the MC Department of Communication. For episode transcripts and more information, visit centerforchristianhistory.com. Be sure to subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and follow the Center for Christian History on Facebook at the Center for Christian History, and on Instagram at Christ Hist Today. That's ChristHistToday. Our next podcast episode is coming next week. Thank you for listening.